The championship may have been decided, but still 3 races to go and the runners-up spot to be decided within the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Morning, everybody. Welcome to a cold, rather wintry Hockenheim for round 31 of what has been an enthralling year's racing in Formula 3. The championship won by the man who is on pole position for an astonishing 17th time, Felix Rosenqvist, and he's looking for pressure-free 3 more victories this weekend. David Addison and Dave Richardson trackside. Felix Rosenqvist is the man who comes here, as I say, Dave, with all the pressure gone. He can just get on with life and try and rack up yet more wins. And he's had 12 already.
But do you know what? Just before we were going on the air, you're absolutely right. Pressure free. He's done what he needed to do. He'd like to still go out on a high, wouldn't he, and take 3 out of 3 if he could. Absolutely.
And just to add to the fun, he's got a new teammate who is at the front of the grid. Maximilian Günther, a winner this year at the Norris Ring for Muka Motorsport. And again, Muka has had a pretty undercooked year, and Rosenqvist drove for them last year, don't forget. Well, Günther switches to the ex-Brandon Maisano, then Nick Cassidy chassis, and he's put it second on the grid. Third on the grid is Lance Stroll. Despite the mid-season reputation for being a bit of a crashaholic, he's 5th in the championship, and Lance has got better and better and better as the year has gone on, and he's had a second place to go with a couple of thirds, so Lance Stroll becoming more of a factor on pace, on merit, as the year has gone on. He lines up third, and Jake Dennis is the man who is 4th on the grid. Now, second in the championship, the battle is between Antonio Giovinazzi, Charles Leclerc and Jake Dennis, and of the 3, Jake is the better placed on the grid.
Yes, so it will be very, very interesting to see what Jake does from here. Of course, he and Felix Rosenqvist, very, very good mates, and it was wonderful to see, wasn't it, how Felix Rosenqvist was straight away congratulated by Jake Dennis. Jake actually sprinted across Parc Fermé to go and hug Felix and say many congratulations on taking the championship. Great to see that camaraderie, if you like.
Absolutely, and it's 4 Prema Power Team cars in the top 4 places. 5th, Alexander Sims, BMW Ambassador, GT Racer, Ambassador also for the British Racing Drivers Club's Superstars programme for looking after young drivers. He in the high-tech GP car, lining up then 5th on the grid and 6th on the grid, Charles Leclerc for Van Amersfoort. Now we start to throw more teams into the melting pot, but Charles Leclerc mid-season was on a roll, wasn't he? We got to Zandvoort and we thought this could be the man to go for the title, and Zandvoort was where it all went wrong for him. Bad qualifying, accident in one race, going down to turn 1, an accident at Cheviac in another race that put him out altogether, and he hasn't really been able to recover from that.
No, and I've always felt, since they're on in, he has always looked quite subdued. Never been quite the same since.
No, as though he knows that it all fell apart that weekend. Marcus Pommer was a winner at Zandvoort, and he lines up next on the grid. He's going to be 7th on the grid and 8th on the grid, Antonio Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi, he's not inexperienced in Formula 3 terms. Many of the adjectives about his experience you could apply to Felix Rosenqvist, make or break year and all of that. Well, Felix has made Antonio Giovinazzi, I think, has got to be the runner-up. Otherwise, he really is in strife for momentum to keep the career going forward. He, this year, has not done a bad job. He's had 5 victories. He is 2nd in the championship, but for some reason, the Giovinazzi and Carlin and Volkswagen combination just hasn't quite had the pace that Prema, Mercedes and Rosenqvist has.
And I think for me, at Portimao, it was really, really so noticeable where Prema were able to unlock the magic button that was needed for that particular circuit. And to be fair, it wasn't only Carlin, but many of the other teams also unable to unlock that. And that's where, Prema had huge advantage, David.
Indeed. I mean, Prema are an experienced team, but so too is Carlin. And so too is the French signature team back into Formula 3 this year. Alex Albon is the gun of the 2 drivers. And Alex, we've had on the podium this season as well. His best race results have been a couple of second places. He is 9th on the grid here, 7th in the championship. He is one of the drivers that, in fairness, you can look back at over the course of the year and see the progression made. You can see how much better he has got and how he and the team have gelled. Spa, I would say, in the middle of the year was where it started to come good for Alex Albon, and since then he has looked very impressive indeed, and a win before the end of the year would not be undeserving. George Russell had his win at the start of the year.
Now, exactly, and here was a point that I was going to make when we came to him, P10 on the grid for George Russell. And, right at the very beginning of the year, we saw great promise at Silverstone. And then perhaps I expected really rather too much, and it didn't kind of happen in the mid-season. He's been there or thereabouts, but has never quite sparkled in quite the way I imagined he would. And perhaps it's me expecting a little bit too much of someone straight into the championship.
Maybe, but if you think about Max Verstappen last year, well, a lot was anticipated, and he delivered, didn't he?
Yes.
Maybe you're right in terms of the expectation. George went well at Silverstone. Now, home circuit and all that, but he's not done that many miles around the Grand Prix circuit, so it's a venue perhaps that Carlin with Data and George all hooked up at, and it worked nicely for him. But to suggest that he's had a disappointing year would be unfair. Yes, he's a rookie driver, but he's 6th in the championship. It's not bad.
No,
okay, he's not going to win it now. We know that Felix Rosenqvist has had this tremendous run, but then again, Felix is, dare one say it, a Formula 3 veteran now. So
yes, he is a veteran.
George in his first year has done a decent enough job. It's a big grid this weekend. We've got 33 cars, at the back of which is Nicholas Pola. He wasn't the slowest in qualifying, but he had a 5-place grid drop for an accident at the Nürburgring. Callum Eilert, who was quickest in the first free practice session, bounced over one of the sausage curbs. Or the Wurst curbs, yes. If at Wurst you don't succeed, and rattled over the curb and did the suspension. So he was actually slowest in the qualifying session, but he's not quite last on the grid because Nicholas Pola gets this 5-place grid drop. Other droppers are Dorian Boccolacci, he's got 5 places, and Mikkel Jensen gets 5 places. Again, a carryover from Nürburgring last time out. We've got a couple of newcomers as well. One of whom is Tanart Satyaran Tirukul, who takes over from Mahivir Raghunathan, but also rather more significant and pronounceable is Marvin Dienst, who is the winner of the ADAC Formula 4 Championship. He won that here a fortnight ago, and Marvin Dienst makes his Formula 3 debut in one of the Arttech chassis.
Which I was going to go on to say, we've got 2 of those Arttech chassis in the race this weekend, and this is a new Russian team entry, isn't it? And going away, as we see, Stefano Domenicali, of course, the FIA single-seater commissioner, who just off air we heard being interviewed just a few moments ago, and we'll doubtless see him. He's here for the entire weekend, and as he walks back into the paddock area, you know, when we're seeing a new team like this. Artline team come in from Russia, a grid of 33 cars, as you've said. You know, he must walk away thinking, should be blooming proud of this championship now, David.
I would go along with that. I mean, you could say that a lot of the foundation for it was down to Gerhard Berger, but take nothing away from the FIA Single-Seater Commission. Domestic championships may disagree and say, but what about us? But what has been created is an ultra-strong single-seater championship. Is it stronger than GP2 and GP3? Discuss. But it is very competitive. And have a look through. This is like a who's who of junior single-seater racing. The grid for round 31, headed by the champion, appropriately Felix Rosenqvist, ahead of his new teammate, Maximilian Günther. You look further down, Mikkel Jensen with his 5-place grid drop falls to 11th. Raul Hyman is back, he could be one to watch. Gustavo Menez is 15th, always spectacular. Pietro Fittipaldi on the back of a 6th at Portimao, he could be a man to watch. Dorian Boccolacci will go rapidly, I'm sure. Harold Schlegelmilch back into the championship. He goes back to racing in Formula 3 Euro Series in its very early days, well over a decade ago. He had a few years away, went rallying.
Yes.
Came back this season in the Lamborghini Blancpain Super Trofeo, but with all of his experience, and dare one say nothing to prove because he's turned his back on being a career single-seater driver, he's a good guy to have in that car for the Artline team to develop the Arttech chassis and take the experience and help that progress. This is the circuit. It's 4.5 kilometres long. We've got 22 laps. Fastest point just after the intermediate one, the long loop through the Parabolica. That's the fastest point, and then straight on the brakes to the slowest point, the hairpin. The
real pinch point where it's always guaranteed, isn't it? FIA Formula 3 European Championship, as we look at the Prema Power team there, and Lawrence Stroll, Lance's father, in the middle of that picture. That pinch point, which always creates talking points for you and I during the course of any Formula 3 race here at Hockenheim.
Yeah, the Spitzkehrer is the hairpin. They then make their way down through the Mercedes arena and then towards this iconic part of Hockenheim, the old stadium section that the cars turn their way out of the Sachs curve up to the Sud curve and then round to the start and finish line. It is, of course, a one-by-one staggered grid, and so Felix Rosenqvist onto pole. As a loop in the background is Alexander Sims. Write that in your diaries. Alexander Sims does not often make mistakes, and that, coming up to the grid, right in front of everybody, race director included, I've never seen Alexander do anything like it. Just floors the throttle, tries to get warmth into the tyres, loops it, because he knows what he's doing in a racing car, he was able to make it look almost deliberate, wasn't he? Getting back in the right direction. Yeah. Terry Grant, eat your heart out.
I was just playing to the crowd.
Exactly, exactly. Right, well, better it's on the green flag lap than lap 1, Alexander, I suppose. But, as I say, he doesn't do things like that very often. Right, the grid is almost formed. He's still got the back of it to come into place, like Callum Eilert. He'll be one to watch, won't he, in the Red Bull-backed car coming up from 32nd to see what progress he can make. Overtaking, we know, is not easy in Formula 3, but here, especially the new part of the circuit where it's wide, where you can get a tow, and there's the hairpin up at the Spitzkehrer, as Dave Richardson has explained. Yes, you can overtake. Can Felix Rosenqvist continue what has been a very good season for him by taking yet more race wins? I suspect the answer is going to be yes. The green flag at the back says everybody is back from the green flag lap. Round 31 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship is go. Good start by Rosenqvist, bad start by Gunter. So past him goes Stroll, past him goes Dennis, and Gunter's going to be fourth, but it might be worse as Charles Leclerc has a look at the inside. Sims gets forced out wide on the outside line. There's mayhem already. There's one spin. Cars run wide all over the runoff. And I think they're all going to survive that, even though there's one facing the wrong way. He's not come to any harm as the leaders work their way up towards turn 2. Alexander Sims again in strife on the outside line and having to go wide in avoidance. Matt Solomon locks up as they head into the corner. And more drama. I fear that Solomon and also Julio Moreno have been involved. There's a yellow flag out. Sergio Sette Camara was the man off at turn 1. And he has got the engine fired up again. The car creeps back into life as toward the Spitzkehrer they come. It is Rosenqvist ahead of Stroll, and a challenge being made. Look up on the inside of Giovinazzi by Gunter, but he leaves the door wide open, and Charles Leclerc gets 1, maybe 2 places. Now he's got to attack and defend at the same time. Leclerc versus Giovinazzi for position and for points in the championship.
Absolutely crucial. Whoa, as they go into that turn, Giovinazzi just getting his nose in front. That was brilliant to watch.
Brave stuff, wasn't it? And now Alexander Sims tries to buy into that, but again, every time I look at Alexander, he's wide up onto the curbs there. He's found himself out of line once again. So Giovinazzi keeps the position. Gunter responding after his POC start, but it's Stroll in the lead, and the safety car is being deployed at the end of lap 1. They can race until they get to the boards, but there, look, the yellow flags are being waved. The safety car is deployed. Marcus Palmer has a look at the inside and thinks better of it. I think it's possibly because of the shenanigans up at turn 2. We'll catch up on it in a moment. Sergio Sette Camara gets going again. It could even have been for him, because if he was still stranded, safety car would have been needed. And Murphy's Law says you deploy the safety car and the guy you've sent it out for gets going again. Yes. In other words, it could be a brief lap, but there, with rather more damage, is Andy Chang, the Macanese driver. And that does tell you why the safety car is out, because that's broken suspension and punctured tyres. That's not going a whole lot further. So Lance Stroll leads the way. At the end of lap 1, it's Prema Power Team 1, 2, 3, 4 as it was on the grid, but a different order. There's another car off there as well, which I fear is one of the Westtech cars. So the field turning its way out of the Einfahrt Parabolica, aka turn 2, and it is Lance Stroll who leads the way. But yes, Andy Chang's car needs retrieval, and he's done quite a number on that, hasn't he?
Yes, front and rear damage there. And there is the, you were right, is the one of the Westtech cars.
Raoul Hyman,
isn't it? Yes. Now, the shenanigans, the running wide in the opening lap, how much of that is down to the fact that as you and I walked up here, as we take a look at a replay of the start, we said how cold it is and trying to generate some heat into those tyres.
Part of it is cold tyres. I mean, turn 1, if you try, it's a narrow entry to the corner, so if you try and go 3 wide, there just ain't the room round the corner, and it's easier to bail. I suspect Camara's spin was to do with cold tyres and getting himself on a dirty part of the road. Up at turn 2, I mean, there Alexander Sims has just got no room. There was a tag in the back, wasn't there, of Camara from Hyman by the look of it, so that accounts for why Raoul Hyman has stopped. This is turn 2, so there's a big lock-up in the pack. Now, how does Chang get involved? He makes contact with one car, and that does for the suspension, so
it doesn't quite answer the rear puncture, does it?
Well, it doesn't.
It wasn't a secondary hit, was there? No.
But there, Matt Solomon is the one that gets turned around, and there, it's as though it's the failure later in the lap, isn't it? After the contact, then there is the failure, and the suspension gives way completely. And Peter Lee was the other driver involved. In fact, in fairness, I think Peter Lee might have been the one we saw at turn 2, because that's a car that hasn't been too badly damaged. Right, so the more you look, the more you find. What we thought was possibly just Camara getting going again. Now, this was for the race lead, look. Coming down towards the Mercedes arena. And that was how Stroll took the advantage, and that was before the safety car was deployed, so that was a good, brave move, and it was all fine. So Lance Stroll leads the way. Is he going to be able to score a race victory? It would be really good for him personally, because mid-season, people tended to think of him as I say, a bit of a crashaholic, but the pace has got better as the year has gone on. He's become more experienced in Formula 3 terms. He's part of the Ferrari Young Driver Development Programme. He doesn't lack for budget, but Lance Stroll has just got better and better in a Formula 3 car, and to score a win before the end of the season would be a real boost psychologically.
I agree with you. And, well, on course potentially to do so by leading the race now. And Felix Rosenqvist P2, Jake Dennis P3, then it's Maximilian Günther P4 with Antonio Giovinazzi P5. We're still behind the safety car. Leclerc is P6, then it's Alexander Sims, Pomer Menezes and George Russell is P10. That is the top 10 at the moment as the cars continue behind the safety car. No word yet. Just as I say that, I get a message up to say safety car coming in this lap. As it's a huge lock-up, wasn't it?
That's Peter Lee, isn't it?
Yeah.
Getting it all crossed up and all locked up. Just looking at the championship second, third, fourth situation, it won't be resolved in this race, but each driver trying to outscore the other.
It's going to help Dennis's cause, isn't it?
Indeed, because he's fourth coming into the race and he's the best placed on track of the three. So yes, he's taking points away from the others. You're absolutely spot on. Important for Jake Dennis to make even more progress if he can. The race, by the way, is 22 laps or 35 minutes, so it could be that if we get further interruptions, we end up going to time.
This is going to be really interesting to watch because Stroll is now going to have to back them up, isn't he? And it is going to have to do this restart, which Felix Rosenqvist has been a master at over the many safety cars that he's had to restart from.
And of course, it's the first time Lance Stroll has done it as the race leader, but all looks good. Up towards the end of the lap they come. Stroll on. He turns his way into the Sud Curva then. Lance Stroll leads the way. Second is Rosenqvist. Third in the Racing Steps Foundation colours is Jake Dennis, new at Prema this year. In fourth place is Günther after his duff start. Fifth is Antonio Giovinazzi. Sixth is Charles Leclerc. Seventh is Alexander Sims. Eighth, Marcus Pomer. Ninth, Gustavo Menezes. Progress made early on by the American. 10th is George Russell. And also in a big hurry, Alex Albon as they work their way through turn one. Albon looking for a way to get himself up past Michele Beretta as the leaders head through turn two. Now towards the parabolic and they go three wide in the pack. That's going to end in tears if they're not careful. And astonishingly, the Mucca cars manage to avoid one another. Santino Ferrucci loses out, also dropping down the order. Alessio Lorandi and Mikkel Jensen gaining 2 places with some very brave outbraking.
Now, Leclerc and Giovinazzi absolutely side by side. And Leclerc all over the back of Giovinazzi. That's a big mistake, isn't it, from Stroll there? And in the meantime, has Jake Dennis got past?
He has. He's up to second. Arjun Maini is the one on the run-off, but Jake Dennis is up to second at the expense of Rosenqvist. And now Jake Dennis going after the race leader, his teammate. Now, in Formula 3, it's every man for himself, but Felix Rosenqvist has won the championship. I just wonder whether he's thinking about a team game here. It doesn't happen very often in Formula 3, but I'd like to see a replay of the Jake Dennis move, as there you see Matt Rao rotate at turn one. That's coal tires for you, isn't it? Because there's a bit too much speed and he gets it into a lazy slide, which eventually becomes a spin, and he loops it all the way around. But yes, Jake Dennis up into second place. Now, we've got, just to add to the drama of this last weekend, he now said that Gustavo Menezes had been making good progress. Well, he's under investigation for a jump start.
Right.
And Mikkel Jensen is under investigation for a jump start as well. So we've got these Damocletian investigations as well as the leaders go over the line. Stroll to Dennis, who's done the fastest lap of the race, the Brit now, 0.8 of a second. Rosenqvist there in the background third. Günther is fourth. Fifth is Giovinazzi. In sixth is Leclerc. Over the curb, seventh, Alexander Sims in the background. Eighth is Pomer under attack. Ninth is Menezes. 10th is Russell. Out of the points, 11th is Alex Albon. The one who's going to get a move on here is Charles Leclerc, because he's the third on track of those three fighting for second in the championship.
Well, Leclerc's still behind Giovinazzi at the moment. There's that rally cross in there. Oh, good save.
That, I think, was Mikkel Jensen, who has just been given a drive-through for a jump start, and Gustavo Menezes has also been given a drive-through for a jump start. The American there having a look up on the inside of Marcus Pomer. There, look, Ferrucci and Beretta side by side. Santino Ferrucci picks up track position in the Mucca car with the white airbox. Let's have a look at the rally crossing. It was Mikkel Jensen who just runs wide, and then the back starts to go, and where the surface changes from grass to the concrete, that really slips the car, doesn't it?
Honestly, I think that was a brilliant save, because he didn't let off, did he?
No, no.
Just kept it going, and, well, did manage to get it back out onto the track. Now, Okay, so now that we know that Menezes is going to have a drive-through penalty, and he's there battling with George Russell. Russell goes through, and someone that you mentioned who really is on a charge now is Albon.
Yeah, Alex Albon is there right up behind. He's about to gain a place, of course, because Menezes will have to pit. And it's this time, in fact, that Gustavo bails for the pit lane. So Alex Albon is now up into the top 10. Fastest lap of the race, just done by Giovinazzi, whose teammate Menezes there is in. And look at Mikkel Jensen arriving, oh, so quickly. Just gets it slowed down in time for the white line. Do you ever get the feeling he's a bit Albert's mother about this drive-through? He's not very happy about it. Down the pit lane they come. Stroll to Jake Dennis then for the race lead. He's half a second. The lead gap is coming down.
Yes.
Gustavo Menezes down the pit lane. Now, it's hard to see perhaps from where he is in the pack, but the officials have said it was a creep, a jump, and therefore it's a drive-through. And Mikkel Jensen there, look, almost getting himself caught up with Sergio Sette-Câmara. It didn't actually look like that great a start from Jensen, in fairness. But if you're just slightly out of your grid lines, then the penalty is there. It's more of an out-of-position start than a jump, to be fair, under the wording of the regulations. Lance Stroll doing a very good job up front, and I would suggest on this lap, Dave, he's just crept away fractionally from Jake Dennis again. OK, it's seesawing a bit, isn't it? Because Jake took 3/10 out on the last time around, but now, and there's a position change there with Alexander Sims and also Charles Leclerc, and Sims is looking really, really feisty, isn't he? Sims has got past Leclerc. They almost touch wheels. Alexander Sims up the inside, heading into the stadium. He's going to keep the newly won 6th place. Good driving, as you'd anticipate. Alexander Sims, former McLaren GT racer, BMW racer these days, but he came out of single-seater racing, one of the many drivers that's been or in his case, won the BRDC McLaren Autosport Young Driver of the Year award. George Russell, last year's winner, is on the grid. You've got other finalists for it among the Brits also. Jake Dennis has won it in the past. Over the line they come. So Sims is looking feisty, you're dead right, but Stroll is also pulling away from Dennis. He's just done the best lap of the race as Lance Stroll. The gap between them now is 7/10. So brilliant driving from Lance Stroll, who really is controlling this. And Jake Dennis there in P2, then it's Felix Rosenqvist P3, Maximilian Gunter P4, Giovinazzi is P5. Marvin Deans, a quick word about Marvin Deans, who's this year's ADAC Formula 4 champion, new to Formula 3, new to the power and all the downforce. He's running in 25th place, so not a bad first outing for him in, of course, a development chassis as well, because he's driving one of the two Art Techs, which are new and still progressing in terms of development. As there, Felix Rosenqvist closes up under braking onto the back of Jake Dennis, but all of this taking points away from Giovinazzi and from Charles Leclerc. So Dennis going well in his own right, but also perhaps to an extent being helped by Rosenqvist dropping back behind him. Yes. A little bit further down the order, perhaps, Santino Ferrucci is now P11. Given that where he started, he's a driver that's always very, very entertaining to watch. Ferrucci is making reasonable progress. Just out of the points at the moment, the last points playing place going the way of Alexander Albon. But Santino Ferrucci P11. Yeah, he qualified 21st, didn't he? So that's a good effort. Yes. Going very strongly indeed, as you rightly say, and he's not done yet either. Marcus Pommer is involved in a battle. He's lost out to George Russell, so George is up to 8th now in the blue Carlin car there, and George going very strongly. Marcus Pommer then drops back, and I don't think it's going to be long before Alex Albon comes up to try and have a go at him. Over the timing line, we've got 22.5 minutes to go. They've just started lap number 7. Jake Dennis has done the fastest lap of the race once more, and the gap is down to 0.6 of a second. So Jake Dennis, who's done the bulk of his single-seater racing in Europe over the last couple of 3 years, going very well indeed. But Lance Stroll leads the way, and for his championship runners-up prospects, Jake really needs to win this race. Yes, he does. So Boccolacci coming into the pit lane. Now that's not for a penalty as far as we know. We can see why. Yes. Part of your car is missing. Yes. So somebody has gone into the back of him, I fear, and the rear wing has parted company. Right, now we need to find somebody with front damage and piece it all together. And it's gone at turn 1. It's off, and then a bit more flies off, but the rear wing had... So what provoked that damage then? And we've not seen that. Well, either somebody hit him a while ago and it slowly disintegrated, or there was just a complete failure of the rear wing. But it had happened. Very unusual, wouldn't it? Yep. It had happened coming in, before that shot. Yeah. So he's had to do the whole lap at a reduced pace because of the lack of downforce, and I suspect that's going to be game over. They might get the car back out again by way of a test session. But Dorian Boccolacci, frustratingly, it looks as though that's, to all intents and purposes, the end of his race now. So the Monegasque driver in strife as Jake Dennis continues to chase the Canadian Lance Stroll. Of course, for Lance, first year in the championship, he's returning to a venue on which he's raced a Formula 3 car before. Largely, you go to one circuit a year, but Hockenheim is the only place that gets 2 DTM weekends, and therefore it's the only place that gets 2 visits from this championship. So suddenly, he's here with data. He knows the track. He's not having to, and it's the same for the rest as well in their rookie year, but he's not having to do the learning process, and that does certainly seem to be showing at the moment.
Yes, so there is our race leader, Lance Stroll, then 7/10 ahead of Jake Dennis, and it's Felix Rosenqvist P3. And Stroll at the moment absolutely not putting a foot wrong, and there is just the 10th here and there as Dennis sets the fastest lap, doesn't he, and manages to claw another 10th out. But if anything, I think Stroll is really managing this gap very, very well at the front at the moment.
Go along with that. He's not making any mistakes, is he?
No.
You know, he's under pressure. He knows this, and there's that carrot of his first Formula 3 victory there as well. But, he says, tempting fate, he has not put a wheel wrong. But intriguingly now, Felix Rosenqvist is picking up his pace. He's lapping quicker than the 2 ahead of him. So he's getting back onto terms with Jake Dennis. Now, what does he do? Does he think about his own race? Doesn't have to finish third, second, first. He's won the championship, but he wants to be a race winner if he can. But in doing so, would take points away from Jake Dennis. Jake not yet able to think about making a move against Lance Stroll, but the gap is down into the stadium. I was going to say,
yes, I agree. So we see Giovinazzi there running in P5. But yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think Jake Dennis has picked that up, and the gap between himself and Stroll really has come down as they cross the timing line. Any moment now, we'll see what it was 7/10 last time. There's Lance Stroll crossing the line now, and actually it stays the same.
Now, there might be more fun and games from race control because the Deutsche Post runner has just gone sprinting down the pit lane, so I wonder whether there's somebody else that's about to have a message from Sven Stopper, the race director. Dorian Boccolacci there has just come out of the pit lane with a new rear wing, and rather than impede anybody, doing everything absolutely right, getting way out of harm's way, and then he'll pick up the pace once the pack has gone past, and he'll carry on trying to do his effectively test session laps now, ready for race 2, which comes up later on today. All qualifying was yesterday, so they get 2 races today, 1 tomorrow, the way the timetable works out this weekend. Stroll getting away fractionally from Dennis because now Jake has really been caught by Rosenqvist, as if to say, come on Jake, have a go at him, otherwise I'll have a go at you, because Felix is illustrating that he's got the pace to run in that group.
Yes. So there we see the top 3 then. And as you have said, at the moment, Lance Stroll really, really driving supremely well, not putting a foot wrong, not allowing Dennis to get too close. And as you say, I think Dennis is being given the hurry up by Felix Rosenqvist, isn't he?
And also, just have a look at 4th, because I reckon that the yellow Carlin car of Giovinazzi for 5th place is inching up onto the back a little bit of Maximilian Günther. Now, that all said, look through the stadium. You can see the way now that Rosenqvist has fallen away once more, and that potentially is to, again, let Jake Dennis go after Lance Stroll. It might be to let his own tyres cool down a little bit. I'm just wondering whether there's anything he can do to keep Giovinazzi stacked up in the pack, but Giovinazzi's pace suggesting that he might be able to think about making a move against Günther. The fastest lap of the race, though, has just been done by Alexander Sims now.
Right. Now, I mentioned going into the start of this programme how very, very friendly Felix Rosenqvist and Jake Dennis are. Does this have any bearing on where Felix Rosenqvist would like Jake Dennis to finish in the championship, do you think?
Potentially, yes. As I say, Felix has won the championship,
hasn't he? Yes.
And yes, he'd like to win races, but he's also conscious that Prama's power team came to him and said, we want you to spearhead our attack for the year, and therefore Prema has worked well for him. This might be a weekend where Felix works for the team, and if the team is Jake Dennis, why not? It's his mate, they're all in the same camp, and so, yeah, I can certainly see the way that the race has panned out. You know, if Felix Rosenqvist was still dominating up front and were 5 seconds up the road, he'd probably stay there. But the fact that he's not been able to get away, he's lost a place to Lance Stroll, he now can help Jake Dennis, but Jake has to help himself, and 7/10 back on Lance Stroll. He's got to do the hard yards here. There's no real reason why Lance Stroll should give up the lead for him.
No.
This is where it does come down to every man for yourself. So to win the race, Jake Dennis is going to have to work hard, and he's up against somebody who desperately wants a maiden Formula 3 win.
And at the moment, the way he's driving, yeah, I'm inclined to say, is deserving of that. 7/10 over Jake Dennis is that margin. So Stroll, Dennis, Rosenqvist, the 1, 2, 3. Then we see Maximilian Günther and Antonio Giovinazzi watching the car of Marcus Pommer there, who's running in P9, and Santino Ferrucci then up into the points, then P10.
keeping at bay. Alex Albon there in 11th, Alessio Lorandi 12th, Pietro Fittipaldi 13th, Michele Beretta 14th, and Callum Eilert from 32nd to 15th.
That's extraordinary.
That is very, very good. People say you can't overtake in Formula 3. Yeah. Tell Callum Eilert that. Trouble is, I mean, it's been a great effort, but he's still nowhere near the points. He's got to be in the top 10, so there's more work to be done. However, we are on lap number 12 now. We've done 11 of the 22, and it is still conceivable that he can gain more ground, Callum Eilert, before the end, or indeed others might just fall off the road ahead of him. The Prema Power Team steamroller, top 4, and there Alexander Sims makes a mistake, does he, coming through the Spitzkehrer. He briefly got himself past Giovinazzi, but then ran wide, and Giovinazzi came back through. So that saves Giovinazzi to an extent, but now Sims makes another go on the inside, locks up, scrabbles wide, can he cut across and take the line? No! Giovinazzi gets the place back again. Great racing, this.
Absolutely brilliant stuff from Giovinazzi. He was just cool, calm and collected, wasn't he? Twice he's done that now.
But he's got to stay ahead. He can't afford to be giving away places and giving away points. The danger is not only does he get outscored by Dennis, but were Sims to get past him and make it stick, the next person to come up and attack Gio would be Charles Leclerc. Now here's the move. This was Sims at the Spitzkehrer, breaks late, scrabbles into the corner, but while he's sorting himself out, Antonio Giovinazzi says thank you very much, and then it happens again at the next corner. Up the inside goes Sims. He runs a little bit wide, and the switchback is taken by Giovinazzi. Job done.
And of course, whilst all that's going on, it's playing in the hands a little bit to Gunter, isn't it, who's able to get up the road a little bit.
Yeah, and it should be playing into the hands of Charles Leclerc, who should be closing.
Yes.
He's closer, but he's not right with them. And now, look, Giovinazzi, I think, over the last couple of corners has done enough to make sure that Sims, on this section, can't benefit from a tow. But what you said pre-race about the Spitzkehrer being a pinch point, well, again, it proves the point. There's that diversity of lines that people can take, and some work on the way in and others work on the way out. They concertina up under braking. Sims closer once again to Giovinazzi, but he's not able to think about making a move there. We're on lap number 13 here at Hockenheim. It's round 31 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Championship won by the man that lies third, Felix Rosenqvist. Race led for the first time this year by Lance Stroll.
As we watch Giovinazzi and Alexander Sims, then it's P5 and P6. Giovinazzi, having been overtaken by Alexander Sims twice, has got the place back twice. Just have a feeling that Sims is just going to line up Giovinazzi for another go shortly. There's the championship winner, who's currently running in P3. Felix Rosenqvist then for Prema Power Team, with Jake Dennis ahead in P2. Lance Stroll doing a great job with a 1.1 second margin.
Which has gone up and up and up.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. Now one suggests Jake Dennis is thinking, all right, second's better than going off and not scoring at all, and realising that Lance Stroll is looking quicker. He out-qualified Jake, didn't he? Only fractionally, but he was third on the grid to Jake's fourth.
And now Felix is giving Jake the hurry up once again, isn't he? He's getting ever closer to the back of Jake Dennis. Now, when it comes to racing, there's no friends, is there? And is Felix going to have a go at Jake Dennis here and try and take P2 away from him? He's certainly close enough to be able to do it as they head up towards the hairpin, David.
This will be telling if he does make a move. He's in the wheel tracks, but he's not dived out. He just sits there.
Yeah.
He could definitely have made a move there if he'd really needed to.
Interesting.
He's playing the team game, but Jake Dennis just does not seem to have the speed. As again, look, you've got Sims and Giovinazzi together. Sims on the outside, heading down now towards turn 7. Is he going to be able to do it? Not there. Can he stand his ground on the inside? He'll have to brake late, which he does, but can he get the line for the corner? Yes, Giovinazzi tries to get up the inside, but finally Sims has done it. Good move that, and he's taken, what, a couple of laps to really make it stick. And crucially, while they've squabbled, Leclerc is on the back of Giovinazzi. Now, this is interesting for second in the championship now, because if Leclerc can get past Giovinazzi, so the Italian loses points. He's certainly, having lost the place to Sims, dropped back a length, but he could be losing more.
What was really interesting here as Sims did this was he'd got it lined up absolutely perfectly. Last time around, he carried too much speed, didn't he, and went very wide, and that allowed Giovinazzi to get that back. But this time, he nailed it absolutely perfectly, and now, look at him, he's up the road. Now he has got past Giovinazzi. And as you say, Giovinazzi now into the clutches, potentially, of Charles Leclerc.
Who is also taking with him George Russell now. The lead gap is a second. Maybe that hurry-up has worked, because now, look, Rosenqvist has just dropped back ever so slightly. Last lap, he did the absolute best within the first sector. A flying lap around here is just over 90 seconds, give or take. Lance Stroll continues to lead the way and continues to drive absolutely faultlessly. The last lap through, Jake Dennis was just 0.02 of a second quicker. So, I mean, they are very, very evenly matched. But Jake just not close enough now to benefit from a tow. Were he to find 3-4 tenths, then the tow might do some of the extra work for him.
But it's finding those crucial tenths, isn't it? Which, thus far, he's not been able to do.
No, exactly right. Now, here is Leclerc up the inside of Giovinazzi. And here is Giovinazzi up the inside of Leclerc. See, one follows the other. And so place gained back again by Giovinazzi up the inside. That's going to be a fight well worth watching to the end. Look at the way that, as you say, Sims has checked out now. He's up the road. And Giovinazzi has got to sharpen his elbows now to keep Leclerc behind him. And George Russell is almost with them.
Yes, he is. He's rubbing his hands, isn't he? Thinking, you know, if these two come to grief, I'm going to be there to take advantage. So Giovinazzi now adopts extreme defence mode because he has Charles Leclerc right behind him. It's the battle that we were watching on track for P6 and P7, but has got serious connotations for the championship, of course. And George Russell there in P8 is the number 10 car that's right on the back of Charles Leclerc. Giovinazzi seems to get a bit of a hurry up there and gaps Charles Leclerc a little bit.
Yeah, you're right, and Leclerc has got to be ahead, otherwise he's giving away more points, but they are now 6th and 7th, Giovinazzi and Leclerc, Dennis 2nd, and a big slide by Charles Leclerc there, the monogas driver really trying hard as he sprints his way through now the parabolica, but George Russell is exactly what Leclerc does not want. Leclerc needs to focus on Giovinazzi up the road, and instead he's going to have to start defending because George Russell is absolutely flying. The Carlin car goes one way and then the other up the inside of the Van Amersfoort chassis, and George Russell goes through. Leclerc loses points. Again, he tries to get the cut back, but he hits the curb and he gets a bit crossed up. So not only has he not got past Giovinazzi, he's gone back another place in the order. He makes a move to the inside at turn 7. It's the outside line for the next left-hander. George Russell will keep the place. Charles Leclerc, it's not working for him. The pace wasn't quite there, and now he's dropping down the order.
Well, this is all great news for Antonio Giovinazzi. Now, this is George Russell's go at the hairpin then, through on the inside. Leclerc straight to try and get the cut back, but wasn't in the position to be able to do that. George Russell had got maximum traction out of the hairpin, which was absolutely crucial for him. Now, George went outside, then inside, didn't he? Switched positions, dived for the inside, but made it work, and made it work very, very well.
Good racecraft by George Russell, and having got ahead of Charles Leclerc, so he gaps him as they come over the timing line by already 0.6 of a second. So he's another man on a mission. He's away up the road. The lead gap is down to 0.9 of a second. Dennis quicker than Stroll last time. Rosenqvist still runs third. Gunter is fourth. Sims fifth. Giovinazzi is sixth. And the cars now turning their way up through turn 2. Lower down there, look, you've got Santino Ferrucci versus Alex Albon. Half a second betwixt the two, and that's for the last championship point.
Yes, so Ferrucci then running in P10, and as you said, Albon P11. So the Mucca Motorsport Santino Ferrucci, who, as I said, for my money has been very, very entertaining to watch during the course of this, what has been another phenomenally successful FIA Formula 3 European Championship season, as Alexander Albon onto the back of Ferrucci now. Ferrucci is going to have to adopt defend mode, isn't he? Because Albon means business. He's looked quick.
He's not close enough there. Look, he's dropped out of the toe a little bit. So what he needs to do now is try and string together a good couple of corners and see whether he can force a move into the stadium. George Russell proved early on you can overtake in the stadium, but it's not that easy to do, and the gap is just a fraction too great, I think, between the pair of them. We're on lap 17 here, 22-lap race, 7 more minutes to go. I think it's going to go to time rather than laps. It's going to be close, but it could be that the clock kicks in pretty soon because of that safety car period that we had right at the beginning of the race. So Albon needs to get on with this. Up on the curb there, Lance Stroll running into turn 1. Dennis behind him, and the gap has gone up again to a second and a half, and that was a personal best lap by Stroll. That's Lance Stroll turning the wick up, isn't it? To say bye-bye, Jake.
And now it's visible, isn't it?
Yeah, got to say, this is Lance Stroll's drive of the year.
Yes. Has not put a foot wrong since getting his nose in front. There is Felix Rosenqvist, who is P3. Super slow-mo replay then of the championship winner Felix Rosenqvist. You can see there, seemingly has been very happy to run in that P3, almost offering protection to Dennis and Stroll up ahead. Of course, teammates, Maximilian Gunter is P4, and then Alexander Sims is running in P5. So Here is our race leader then, Lance Stroll, then with the drive of the season here at Hockenheim 2, because it is the second time, as David mentioned earlier, that the drivers have been here at Hockenheim. Early on in the season, of course, they were here with, as you rightly said, data and experience of this circuit. They come for the second visit right at the very, very end of the season, and still Alexander Albon trying to reel in Santino Ferrucci ahead for the final points-paying position.
And Lance Stroll, only in his second full year of car racing, he raced in the Italian F4 Series. He was one of a number that went to New Zealand in the winter and did the Toyota Racing Series, but it's a new car, it's new circuits to him. Same for many, grant you, but Lance Stroll putting it into good use this weekend. I reckon that Ferrucci's going to be able to hang on to this, because Alex Albon, a bit like Jake Dennis, he's never quite getting close enough to the car ahead to really make that move. And a small error there made coming out of the Sud Curva. Over the timing line they go. We've got 5 minutes to go.
Albon, of course, another one of those that you mentioned that's on the grid that was a finalist in the McLaren Autosport Award last year. Currently running just out of the points in P11, frustratingly for him. Equally frustrating is the fact that he cannot seem to just get close enough to Santino Ferrucci to have a go.
It's Pietro Fittipaldi, isn't it, who is in 13th place, but Fittipaldi has got better and better as his year has gone on. He has had a couple of 6th places. One of the drivers that you almost forget about, because it's just such a competitive championship, and if you're going to get noticed in this, you really have to work hard and you really have to be good.
Yes. So a grid that has provided some very, very interesting racing during the course of the year, and all signs are set for a very, very strong season next season as well, with some of the names that are being bandied about that are coming in here. Alexander Sims and Antonio Giovinazzi there closing up. Giovinazzi now. Is that Alexander Sims just making one or two little tiny errors that's allowed Giovinazzi to get close, or is it Giovinazzi being a bit quicker now?
It's Giovinazzi being a bit quicker, because he's done a personal best within the middle sector and has taken a full second out there within that middle sector. So he's certainly speeding up. Sims may have made a tiny error, but even so, Giovinazzi is back on a mission late in the race. He's getting the hurry up. We start lap 20. We just about might get this in, you know, because it's going to be very tight, but 3 3/4 minutes to go, so it's just about going to work. Sims has had a good run despite that pre-race spin. He runs 5th, heading up now towards turn 2. Have a look behind. George Russell keeping Charles Leclerc at bay. So Leclerc is the big loser in this race as far as the championship 2nd, 3rd, 4th battle is concerned, because he started 6th on the grid and he's now running in 8th place.
Yes, going backwards. Gone backwards, of course, Charles Leclerc. Alexander Sims then running in P5. And I think what impresses me about Alexander Sims is the fact that he jumps in and out of all sorts of different racing cars, doesn't he? And he's able to switch it on, David, and has been, well, mighty impressive in this race, as we continue to watch this battle between George Russell, the Carlin driver, and the Van Amersfoort driver, Charles Leclerc. And there is Sims and Giovinazzi.
Just factor into this that Sims does run in the guest class, so he doesn't score points. So those behind him move up one in terms of points. But even so, from Charles Leclerc's point of view, the frustration will be that he has been overtaken by people during the race. So Giovinazzi, to an extent, can afford to let him go, as long as he's not then losing more places because of that. But they're not losing extra points to Sims because he's in that guest category. So in points position terms, Giovinazzi is 5th and Leclerc is 7th. But they're still behind Jake Dennis, and Jake Dennis is a very definite second.
Yes, second by 1.5 seconds to that man who is leading this race and has driven fantastically, Lance Stroll. It's now actually Jake Dennis takes 3/10 out of him, because it's down to 1.2. But is this charge from Dennis is going to come a little bit too late, isn't it?
It's his last roll of the dice, isn't it? He's just done a personal best lap. What he's got to try and do now is get close, coming out of turn 2, get the toe up toward the Spitzkehrer. But from 1.2 seconds back, I think it's too much. We're on lap 21 then, of 22. There's one more lap to run, therefore, at the end of this, as you see Alessio Lorandi turning his way through on the back now of Alex Albon, who's dropped back from Santino Ferrucci. Look at the gap that's opened up there. Ferrucci is long gone.
And is Albon going to be under real pressure here from Lorandi as they go round the parabolica heading up towards that hairpin? Albon's going to have to stick his elbows out here.
He might have to. Also, Leclerc's having a go back at George Russell. Dennis has taken another 2/10 out of Stroll for the race lead, so he's not given up yet. As I say, it's his last roll of the dice. This could be the preparation lap, as it were, to try and really get himself close enough to make a move on the last lap. But what Jake Dennis cannot afford to do is have one last go that then puts him in strife and he doesn't score at all. It's all smiles at Prema because their cars are running 1, 2, 3, 4. That is how they would like to keep it.
Yes, of course.
The order, perhaps they're not fussed about, but they need 4 finishers.
Yes.
They don't want any in the gravel or any repairs before race 2. So, middle sector, a 10th quicker, Dennis, than Stroll. So he's taken 3/10 out, and it was 1.2 at the start of the lap. So it should, if the progress continues, be 9/10 or better when they come over the timing line. Let's see what the last sector is. They go through, and the gap is 8/10. So he's taken another 10th out in the last sector. So 0.8 starting the last lap. That is less than it has been for many a lap.
Indeed. But is it still too great for him to be able to have a go? Well, the remainder of this lap is going to be telling, isn't it? And we are going to see as Lorandi on the back of Alexander Albon once again.
Ron Tvita through. Behind him is the recovering Sergio Sette Camara. Remember, he had his lap 1, turn 1 spin. He's in 17th place now in the Moto Park car. Track limit abused there at turn 1. He only had to pay to get back in, didn't he? He went very wide there. But anyway, Camara continues on his merry way, chasing after Ryan Tvita up towards turn 2 now. The lead gap is down again in the first sector, Dave. Dennis, I think he's going to get close, but no cigar. But he's having a real go on this last lap.
Well, there we watch Sette Camara then in P17, whilst Jake Dennis is on his way, trying to get past Lance Stroll.
We'll get the middle sector up in a moment. Stroll, personal best middle. Jake Dennis matches him to the 10th, so it's going to be close between them as the leaders work their way through. And there is Gustavo Menezes versus Tatiana Calderon, the two Carlin drivers side by side. Here are the race leaders. Lance Stroll is set for a first ever win in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship then as he works his way up towards the checkered flag. It's the last corner. He turns his way now up towards the timing line. Lance Stroll wins for the first time in Formula 3. He's a delighted man. Jake Dennis is second, Felix Rosenqvist third, fourth is Max Günther. Prema Power Team locks out the top 4. Alexander Sims is 5th, but a guest, so no points for him. But Giovinazzi 6th, Russell 7th, Leclerc 8th, Pommer 9th, and Santino Ferrucci 10th will all move up in terms of the points available to them. But Lance Stroll, you've got to take your hat off to. Yes, he got a bad reputation, Monza and Spa being involved in accidents. In fairness, from then on, Red Bull Ring was, I think, where he started to turn the year around. He was much calmer and much quicker, and that win wasn't gifted to him. He worked hard for that, and if he did put a wheel wrong, I didn't see it.
No, absolutely, and you know, Jake Dennis's valiant effort was really rather left all too late, wasn't it? Because he needed to have turned the wick up earlier than he did, and leaving it to the last lap, it wasn't possible for him to get on terms with this man from Prema Power Team. And David has rightly said, what a result for Prema Power Team. And there is Lawrence Stroll, Lance's father, who's absolutely delighted. Rennie Rossin then from the Prema Power Team, who's very often smiling, it has to be said.
Yes.
And the reason for that is huge success, and reinforced by this checkered flag moment then for Lance Stroll, who takes his first win in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Great driving from him.
And crude math reckon that's the 19th win that Prema's had this year alone. I mean, the bulk of them done by Felix Rosenqvist, but you take his and Jake Dennis's and now Lance Stroll's results and throw them all into the melting pot. What an amazing season. But yeah, fair play to Lance Stroll. And that again is one of the fascinations of a long championship like this. 33 races. We've still got 2 to go, but we talked about it with George Russell, Alex Albon, 1 or 2 others. Lance Stroll is an example as well of how drivers develop over the course of that season. Lance Stroll wins round 31 ahead of Jake Dennis and Felix Rosenqvist. Max Günther takes 4th position. 5th goes the way of Alexander Sims. 6th, Antonio Giovinazzi. In 7th place, George Russell. Charles Leclerc is 8th. 9th, Marcus Pommer. And the last point goes the way of Santino Ferrucci.
Well, Alexander Albon just out of the points then, P11. Then it was Lorandi, Fittipaldi, Beretta. Callum Eilert, I have to say, who finished P15, did a sterling job, David.
Yeah, he deserves more than he gets for that, because he gets nothing out of the points. Yes, what is the point of all that charging up through the field? But it proves his racecraft, and Callum Eilert will be better placed on subsequent grids, and he's proved he's going to be one to watch this weekend. 3rd place for the champion, Felix Rosenqvist then, he's won the crown. He takes third place for Prema, plays the team game in round 31 of the championship. Jake Dennis then bags second, more points in his quest to be the championship runner-up, and significantly he outscores Antonio Giovinazzi and Charles Leclerc. He ends up 8/10ths back on Lance Stroll, the Canadian driver, who becomes a race winner for the first time in the championship, and that certainly will be the memory that he wants to keep of the season rather than the incidents midway through the year, because that was a very impressive drive indeed. No wonder Prema Power Team and his father Lawrence are delighted.
Well, as we see the delight there, there is the young man with the Ferrari Driver Academy badge on the top of his crash helmet as he makes his way out of that Prema Power Team car. There's Jake Dennis, it's Felix Rosenqvist, both over there to offer congratulations to Lance Stroll then, who takes that win, is congratulated by the team. Huge huddle of Prema engineers down there. And he'll make his way to his father now. And Rennie Russin then from Prema Power Team. Engineered a fine performance in that race with the top four cars all going the way of Prema. So Lance Stroll then takes his first win in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. The drivers will make their way up to the podium now. And alongside me, my learned friend is doing more calculations as we speak.
I was just trying to get to the bottom of something I was mulling over in my mind, which was, is Lance Stroll the first Canadian to win in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship? Answer yes, because Nicholas Latifi never had a win, did he? So Lance Stroll is,
right,
by my reckoning, the first Canadian winner. This is how the championship looks. Let's just get back to the plot. Rosenqvist, the champion as we know. Giovinazzi, Leclerc, Dennis. The order stays the same, but Jake Dennis is that little bit closer. Two more races to come, one of which, of course, is going to be later on today. So that is another opportunity for Jake Dennis to get himself up closer to be the runner-up within the championship. Race 2 will start at 4:05 local time. Join us for that if you can this afternoon.
So Jake Dennis now on 351 points. Closing up nicely, isn't it?
Leaping up the order. Jake Dennis then, getting closer and closer and closer as you have Lance Stroll, to the delight of the team, and relief as well, as I say, because midway through the year he was being talked about for all the wrong reasons, and that was an excellent drive. As we've been saying, he didn't put a wheel wrong, and the lessons learnt over the course of the season put to good effect. And the Strolls that have this rather nomadic season, don't they, travelling around Europe,
yes,
in their admittedly luxurious motorhome, can celebrate a victory.
How important, I mentioned during the course of that race, very, very strong has FIA Formula 3 been during the course of the season, how strong it's looking for next season as well, with some of the names that are being bandied about that will be joining the grid. Maybe over the course of the next race or two, we might mention one or two of those. But for a team like Prema, supremely dominant, it's a really, really important showcase for them as well, isn't it? Because, of course, they want to attract the very best drivers into their cars.
And indeed, being cynical, can put the price up. Because
okay,
if you're the go-to team, then people want to go, and you can charge, not what you want, but clearly you can offer a service for a given fee that some of the smaller teams without those results can't.
Yes.
So it does put them in a very strong position. And Prema is a team that's had its ups and downs.
I was going to say, it hasn't always been.
No, it won the very first Euro Series when Ryan Briscoe drove for them back in 2003, and then had a few years in the doldrums, but it's really come on a pace over the last few years. Winning last year with Esteban Ocon, for example, as well. So we have on the top step of the podium Lance Stroll. His teammate Jake Dennis there is the man that is second, and he wants to be second in the championship, not just races, by the end of the day. And Felix Rosenqvist, the champion, is on the podium as well. Prema Power Team will be represented, and the podium complete. This is the overall podium. Lance Stroll is also the winning rookie, don't forget, here at Hockenheim.
once again, an interesting fade on the national anthem. As there we see Lance Stroll, Jake Dennis and Felix Rosenqvist. Stefano Domenicali then, the president of the FIA Single-Seater Commission, makes that trophy presentation to Lance Stroll. David, he'll remember that for a long time.
Just a perfect drive, and he controlled that pace. You could argue that Felix Rosenqvist did not make life difficult when the two were battling, but as we keep saying, he didn't crack under pressure. And once he hit the front, Lance Stroll controlled that race.
A point I was going to make is Felix Rosenqvist, having done everything that he needs to win the championship, now plays the team game. That'll be attractive to some people further in his career, potentially.
Because it shows his intelligence, and it shows that you can trust him as a guy, and it shows that he respects people around him. I know that Felix has spent years trying to work through the single-seater ranks, and there as he receives his third-place trophy from Manfred Sandbichler of Hankook, perhaps he has his eyes on GP2 for the future, but I've got to say, I think he'd be an asset to a manufacturer in a GT car.
Yes. Yes. Oh, well, we'll lay that one out there and see what happens, won't we?
Yes. But it would be good to see how far in single-seater racing he can get, but then you come down to budget again.
Yes.
And to go to GP2, which really is where he would need to be, it ain't cheap.
I think it's fair to say that Felix has it's always been a struggle, hasn't it, budgetary? And it would be such a shame to see that talent restricted still further by budget. Was it ever thus?
Well, precisely so, and therefore the likes of Lance Stroll, for example, and his father investing in Prema, or if you think about the Jagonia I Am family that have supported young drivers in recent years, some have been able to benefit. Well, we've got 2 more races to go. Second place in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship is still up for grabs, and race 2 comes up at 4:05 this afternoon. Join us for that if you can. For now, from David Addison and Dave Richardson, bye for now.